Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Salam Islamic Weekly Seerah series. Just a friendly reminder, especially for our new audience. We're reading and following The Messenger of God by Fethullah Gulen every Tuesday. And today's topic is Communication and Intellect, Prophets Communicated with Intellect-I, chapter number 4, by Dr. Yasir Bilgin. Before we get started, let me first briefly share with you Dr. Bilgin's bio. Dr. Bilgin has served as a Pastoral Care Giver, Interfaith Dialogue Coordinator, and Executive Director for the Niagara Foundation and the Turkish Community in Minnesota, Michigan, and the Chicago area. He also worked as an instructor at Michigan State University for 4 years. Dr. Bilgin also received his Ph.D. from the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago. He studies in the field of psychology of religion and spirituality with a focus on religious coping. He also teaches at the University of Chicago Graham School and at the University of Illinois at Chicago. He is active in dialogue, writing and presenting in various venues about the subjects of dialogue within the Abrahamic faiths, Islam, pastoral care within Muslim communities. His work in the area of interfaith dialogue and cultural diversity has been recognized by the state of Michigan and Michigan State University. Dr. Bilgin is currently living with his family in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Chicago. Dr. Bilgin, welcome and thank you for being with us. The floor is yours.
Hello, Asra. Thank you. I'm honored to be part of this series, and thank you for inviting me and hosting this program especially, which is especially very needed topic for us in general, for the Muslim community and youth especially, when we are looking for role models and trying to better understand the Prophet Muhammad, especially in today's context. So my focus, as you mentioned, will be the one aspect of the attributes of the prophets in general, and especially that attribute in the context of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But just as a starter, this series started with the several attributes of the prophets, and the Prophet Muhammad is part of a larger and universal tradition. He is not just someone who is emerging by itself and also just bringing a message that totally innovative and totally new. He is part of the continuation of a larger and historical tradition, as he mentioned. And in one of his narrations, he says there are like 124,000 prophets came throughout the human history in different contexts, in different times. So, but we just see his life and the description of the Quran, the other, especially local prophets, which we see around like 27 prophets mentioned in the Quran. But if we just refer the saying of the Prophet Muhammad, probably there are much more prophets came in other parts of the world. So just imaginatively, if the Prophet Muhammad was coming, for example, in India or in Europe, probably we would know the prophets who just came in those regions with different names, and those sages, maybe we just know their names today, but not as a prophet, but maybe as a leader, as a spiritual leader. So we would learn about their lives. But he is a part of that continuous kind of a school of thought, a school of spiritual tradition. And in other saying, he says, I am the final brick of a big building. So that building is composed of many other bricks, which is the other sages and then the prophets, spiritual leaders coming throughout the history. So he says, I am just finalizing this building. So if you think the Prophet Muhammad's life in this larger context, it will help us to understand his mission and understand his references to other prophets and to other spiritual leaders, not only in the Middle East like Abrahamic traditions, but also in the larger context, like people, leaders like the Buddha or Gandhi, like all of those leaders. So in this sense, he is completing and echoing and complementing those leaders, and they are also doing the same thing for him. And of course, in other parts of this series, you mentioned other attributes of the Prophet Muhammad. The first one was the truthfulness, and talk about his sadq in the Arabic term. And the other one is his trustworthiness, which is the term is amana. And mostly people were calling the Prophet Muhammad as Muhammadul Amin even before his prophecy started. But based on these attributes, the third one is the communication of the message. But this term in Arabic is tabligh, when we just convey a message to someone else. But this is not something in a kind of a diplomatic manner that someone is taking a letter and then taking to someone else and then letting him or her read the message and then listening the response. It is not just kind of giving the message and then the receiving the response. It's just much larger than this when we say the tabligh, the term the tabligh. So it's just the conveying the message, conveying a vision, a revelation, an inspiration, or kind of a state of being when you convey them. It doesn't necessarily be through the verbal communication. It can be with other means. And when you look at the like essence of this communication, it is like a prophet, either it be the Prophet Muhammad or the Moses or the Jesus, peace be upon them, they are experiencing an extraordinary situation, and then they just meet with the divine presence. So they just feel and experience this presence either in the Mount Sinai or next to the fire or in the cave, as in the case of the Prophet Muhammad. And that presence, that being is just transform them. So when they are transformed, it just creates certain level of energy, a certain level of excitement, sometimes like mixed with fear, and just because they don't know what are they experiencing. Like the first response of the Prophet Muhammad when he was running to the Khadija and then saying, I guess I am possessed. So that was his like first response, because he don't know what he is experiencing, but it's something absolutely transforming, changing their being and their understanding. So after experiencing this, and which we can describe it sometimes as the kind of state of peace, state of shalom, or in the Hebrew tradition, or the salam. So that presence, which in the Turkish language, which is coming from the Arabic, the term hudur, we use huzur or the hudur, which has two meanings. The first one is to be present in the presence of someone, totally with your all faculties, to be present. But at the same time, huzur means inner peace, the tranquility. So that both of them, in a sense, requires each other. If you are not fully present, you don't feel the inner peace. If you want to feel that inner peace, you should be present. I guess that also the other terms like the shakina or the sakina, that sort of tranquility, when people feel that sort of divine encounter, when they feel that divine presence, it just creates and then make people feel that wholeness, whole peace in their body, in their mind, in their soul. I guess after experiencing this, after entering this holy presence, which is the Quds, comes from there, and then that holy place, that experience, in a sense, convey them a state of heavenly presence in front of God, and then they want to re-experience it again and again. So when they come back and feeling that sort of presence in the sight of God, they are coming, and then much of the regulations like the Sharia or the Halakha in the Jewish tradition, much of them are aiming to keep us in a state that maximize our experience of God, our experience of that presence. So anything that violate that presence, anything that violate that holiness, and then drag encounter with God is also violating that sort of relationship. And how we can restore this relationship and how we can feel whole again and present again and connected again. I guess that's the main essence of communication, the tabligh, or the essence of the religions or the spirituality. So in this sense, they are conveying a kind of a new worldview, a proactive struggle to sometimes restore the justice if it is preventing that presence, or they preserve the human dignity if we are broken and if we are struggle with many things that is not suitable for our dignity as human beings. So they are trying to restore that and also convey a meaningful and purposeful life that is in harmony with the rest of the universe. Because when we are part of this universal symphony, a universal harmony, how can attune ourselves to this symphony without clashing, without hurting ourselves? So that's the kind of essence of the messages. And there are other attributes that in upcoming week we will see and try to understand. But before going into deeper to the my topic of communication or the tabligh, I want to just identify like 5 areas that I want to focus. First of all, what is the content of his message or the prophet's message, or the content of this communication? And the second one is what is the context of this communication, and who is the audience for this communication, because these are very important. When the context is changing, sometimes the emphasis in the message is changing, tone of the message is changing. And when the audience, if you don't know the audience, it may not make sense, the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad or the verses in the Quran. And then the other aspect is the manner of the Prophet Muhammad when he is conveying this message, and also the methodology, finally, that he follows. When we focus on the content, what is the content of this tabligh, that communication? First of all, when we look at the major themes of the Quran, right, what are those messages? Because the Prophet Muhammad, as Aisha radiallahu anha mentions, don't you look at when they ask about the akhlaq or the good manners of the Prophet Muhammad, and she responds, don't you read the Quran? He is just manifesting what the message of the Quran in his life. So they are just reflecting each other. So when we look at the Quran's message, which the Prophet Muhammad conveyed to his community at that time, first one is the divine unity, right? When we look at the universe, when we look at the everything around us, the stars, the galaxies, the creation, the multiplicity, right? Everything, there are so many things, and then there are so many agencies, so many wheels and variables that is affecting our surrounding. But how all of these come together and create a harmony in the universe, in our surrounding, and who is kind of orchestrating this, right? And who is creating the patterns, the rules, the principles that all of these individual things are following. and who is this person, and how we can know him. And the second one is the communication and guidance. We are living in this world, and we just found ourselves in this world, and all of us asking why I am here, right? What is the purpose of my being here? Who brought me here? Why that person or that power brought me here? And how can I find a meaning and purpose in this sometimes chaotic environment and unknown, right? And the third main message. So in the second one, we see the prophets, we see the messengers, and also scriptures guiding and orienting people throughout the human history. The third main message of the Quran, which the Prophet Muhammad shares, is the continuity of existence. Like when we look at this massive universe, we are very small, tiny part of this massive being, and we just flourish a very small amount of time and then disappear. Right? All of a sudden, we are invited to a kind of a palace of existence. We see everything, we just taste many things, we experience many things, and all of a sudden, darkness, nothing, just as if happens. After experiencing, tasting all of these, we are seeking something like continue this experience. And that sudden disconnection doesn't make sense for all of us. It's just we are seeking some continuous relations. We want to continue see the world unfolding in front of eyes, either in this world or in other stage of the existence, whatever it is, right? This is another message of the Quran, that there is a continuity, because the one who is making this universe is eternal, and he is creating eternal mirrors and providing this medium of eternal existence. And the fourth one is the provision of justice, either in this world or the life after this one, or in other stages of the existence. There will be eventual justice, and we struggle for that justice, but nothing in vain, and everything will be equated at the end, and then this justice will be restored. And finally, the commitment to the divine service, which is the Arabic term, is the ubudiyya. When we commit ourselves as if like a slave committing himself to a master, but not the human sense, but is a kind of a voluntary slavery, is a voluntary kind of servitude to a higher purpose, to a higher project, a higher kind of organization that we admire, that we choose, and then eventually we want to be a part of it, and part of that creation, and we want to contribute something to this unfolding of the reality. So these are the kind of main content and the messages of the Prophet Muhammad, who was sharing these messages through the Quran, through his life, exemplary life, and through his sayings. But re-emphasizing on the questions, when we look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad, or the life of other sages, other spiritual leaders today or in history, throughout the human beings, we are asking kind of certain questions, like big questions of humanity, right? Who am I as the person, right? What makes me a person and conscious being that is judging, observing, kind of experiencing thing? And the second one, what is a meaningful life? Can you describe me what is a meaningful life, and how can I achieve that meaningful life? The second one is, who is the maker of this universe that brought me here and just put me here, and I'm just experiencing this? What is the attributes, names, qualities of that being? And the other one is, what is a good life? Can you just describe me criteria of a good life so I can just follow it, so I can just build that good life in my personal life? And the other one is, what is the purposeful life? Yes, I can enjoy it. I can just, see everything and then just living like a kind of a vacation and a luxury. But if I don't have a purpose, how can I be part of this harmonious symphony. And the other thing is, how do we know, like, what is beautiful? What makes something beautiful or ugly, right? Who determines this? Or what is good and evil, and where are they coming from, and who determines them? And the other one is, what is a just society? Who makes this justice, and what are those laws and rules, and how we can regulate our society according to those. And finally, and last but not least, what is the human knowledge? How do we know what we know? And what is the source of a good knowledge? And should we trust everything that as a source of knowledge? And how we are going to find those good answers for our big questions, right? These are the big questions that when we look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad, we are trying to find answers for these questions. And the other aspect that I just want to emphasize is how can I establish in my personal life, in my family life, in my community, that peace, the shalom, the salam, or that wholeness and the cosmic harmony in my family life or the community life, and how the creator of the universe revealed itself to me and to my community. What are the mediums that I can, sit in front of him? And then I want to listen to you, and I want to understand what is your purpose, so I can live accordingly, right? I want to ask questions. And I want to understand the mystery of life, and how can I directly connect with this divine being? What are those mediums, right? And also the other one is, yes, there is a cosmic plan. Yes, there is maybe a big picture, everything like revolving around some universal laws that we call Sunnatullah, right? And as an individual and as an agent, when I insert my will to this symphony, and I make some choices, and I say, okay, I want to do something like this. So what is the place of my will when I do something, maybe violate and then act against the will of God? What is the place of my agency in this big picture? I mean, all of these and many other questions, you can add many more questions. Probably the audience in the time of the Prophet Muhammad was asking to him, right? Explain this. What is the purpose of this? What is the purpose of the moon? And why we are here? And where are we going to go? And after we die and our bones disappear, do you say that we are resurrected again? These are the kind of responses to Prophet Muhammad. And of course, we are in a sense trying to find some like holistic, all-comprehensive explanations and a paradigm, in a sense, a meaning system and understanding that is connecting all of these questions and answers in a meaningful whole, rather than just individual answers that is conflicting with each other and not creating a whole. So we are trying to avoid some cognitive dissonances, because some part of our knowledge is conflicting with other part of it, and we cannot create that harmony. So we seek that harmony, consistency in our life. So we just appeal for answers to different sources. One of them is reason. Like, we are using our reason and logic to we are finding some premises, some axioms, some basic unchanging foundations, and building everything logically upon those foundations to make sense of the universe, like in a sense a mathematical axiomatic formulation of the universe. The other one is we are appealing to our intuitions. How do I kind of feel it? It's just emerge as a meaning inside me, as a picture, as a vision, or other things, the inspiration or the revelations to the prophets or the sages or other people, or personal experience, right? Everyone can say something else, but personally, I experienced this. I don't care about what other people say. This is real for me, right? In an existential sense, this is my being. This is how I understand. So we just appeal to those personal experiences. The another thing is that we seek the answers for this question is the scientific experiments, right? So we just develop a theory, a hypothesis, and then we just turn to the nature and then throw our hypothesis to the nature. And then however the nature responds to us saying, well, your hypothesis is garbage, then it doesn't make any sense. So the nature needs to be in alliance with us and then respond saying that, well, it works in me. So you are on the right path. So we are developing this discursive science and understanding in the nature, through the nature, because as we see the nature is another kind of scripture of divine, that the divine will is revealing itself continuously, daily, and then we just observing those manifestations and trying to understand the will of God through those experiments. So some of us appealing and then asking for answers through this medium, and some of us the sensations or the tradition. For some people, they like more structure, they like more traditional elder wisdom, folk wisdom, and then they want to know things and then adhere those traditional lines and try to understand the answers through the tradition. But there is diversity. I mean, everyone is trying to, I guess, find answers to those big questions in their personal lives or in the collective community life for these questions, and then appealing to different mediums. The second aspect that I want to emphasize to understand the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, communication or the tabligh is the context that he emerged, right, in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca and Medina, which when we describe, we see as a kind of harsh desert environment. And also people are harsh sometimes, and it's a kind of huge deserted area, some mountains, hard to find the water wells, and then those waters and oases is very valuable, kind of a heaven-like places. The second aspect is we see in Mecca idols, like people worshipping. It is narrated around like 360 idols present before the Prophet Muhammad in Mecca, in the building of the Kaaba. So just think of like every tribe, every family has their idols. And all of those idols are not connected with each other. It's not part of a kind of a larger network who is working simultaneously and harmoniously with each other. There are many different views inserted by these idols, and those multiplicity of sovereigns, in a sense, in the same realm, creating, in a sense, a chaotic environment, right? Chaotic environment. To whom I will appeal, and what if my God is stronger than your God, and what if my God is defeated? What I'm gonna do, or he did not answer my questions? That sort of environment we see, and the other one is the social and economic injustice, especially the rich merchants of the Meccans. They are becoming richer and richer. And then the clienteles that are coming and living around the Mecca, they are much poor people, and we see a lot of emphasis, especially in the early chapters of the Quran, on this injustice, and then just help the poor, feed the poor, the hungry, and then take care of the widows. A lot of emphasis we see in the Quran. And the other one is the attributes of this community. The context is the tribal loyalty and kind of loss of individual agency. When it's so strong that you don't see those individual voices. When the tribal priorities come to the fore, no one challenged them. So everyone part of that tribal identity. And when we're looking at the Quranic narrations, we see several things. This is what we see from our ancestors, right? They told us to worship these idols and we just follow them. As if as an individual, that person doesn't have a voice, a choice. It's so strong that he is obliged, feel obliged to be part of that larger society. Even there is an injustice. So they should stand with alliance with his or her tribe. And the other one is the moral decline that we observe in the time of the Prophet Muhammad before his prophecy. And also another attribute is the no belief of the afterlife. Like in this communities, in that society, there is no concept of afterlife or the eventual restoration of justice. They call there's a dahr. Dahr means time. When they are looking at the desert, they see an animal or other things just flourishing, living, dying, and then in time, his body is disappearing, bones disappearing, just the time making it just disappear, and then as if that being never be there. So there is only dahr, what we see. We just come here, live here, and then disappear. And then you become a sand in the desert. So that is kind of how do they understand. And this is the very much early emphasis of the Quran's message, restoring that sense of continuity, sense of eternal life, and sense of justice that will be restored in the future. And also in this community, the ideal life is the kind of the oasis when you live in a deserted area. And then you just walk in the desert, which is a burning environment under the sun, no water, everything is like sands. And all of a sudden you are entering an oasis that you see the birds are singing, and then the flowers. There is a water, which is a kind of underground water coming to that area. And then those green oases becoming an ideal after that burning outside place as a refuge. So that sort of environment, which we see a lot of depictions of the heaven, depictions of the hell, adhering to those cultural environment. So in this sense, when we look at this environment, there is a term, kufr, in Quran. These communities are living, but first of all, we should understand the term, the kufr. Kufr, as an Arabic term, literally means when a farmer, opens up the soil, right? And then put the seeds in the soil and then cover it again so to make the seeds invisible, right? So this act means kafara. Kafara al-fallah, the farmer cover the seeds and make it invisible. So this is the act of kafara. But what is the relationship with the kufr, right? Which is translated as an infidel, in which I don't think is making any sense in this sense. It is the meaning is when each of us, as the part of the creation, we are mirrors. Like none of us literally own its own being, right? I don't own my eyes or the ears and other. They are kind of given, trusted to me. And when the time comes, they just go away and I cannot control it, right? So that's kind of, they are given. But I don't own them, but I have to say, well, this eye that I use is owned by someone else, right? Referring and citing the source. Or when you write a kind of a paper or a dissertation, when you get an idea from someone, you put a citation saying that this idea coming from this person. So you honor the owner, like you honor the real owner. Similarly, everything is written on our being is owned by someone else. But if someone look at it, do they see that seed, like the farmer example, or is that seed is covered, right? Do they see, when they look at my mirror, do they see the real owner? And in my reflection, in my mirror, they can just watch the God manifesting on this mirror? Or I am just covering the owner, like the seed covered, and making the real God invisible in my behaviors and attitudes. So when someone look at me, do they see and appreciate God in this mirror, because I am just mere reflection, not the owner, just mere reflection? Or do I claim ownership and say, no, don't look away, I am the owner, so give the credits to me? So this is the term kufr. This is the term kufr, and a lot of emphasis on this in the Quran, describing the attitudes of those people in that society, and enjoying the life, but not citing, not crediting the real owner by the praise, by referring to God. So the Prophet Muhammad was, peace be upon him, in this context, and his challenge was how to restore and instill a sense of justice, equality, social solidarity, and compassion, but beyond tribal boundaries. Not only like, because of they are from my tribe, I should take care of them, but if they are not from my tribe, I don't care. So how to create that sense of ummah, right, beyond the tribal priorities? How to create a sense of humanity beyond the also ummah boundaries as well. And the second one, how to restore and instill a meaning and purpose beyond this life. So my life is not limited with this life, and I should struggle, and I should kind of work for a continuous life journey in other stages. And then the third one was, his challenge is a unifying vision of creation, which we called monotheism, rather than many things is being in existence in a state of chaos, without any network, without any communication, and everything they had their own agency, and there is no rules managing, there is no rules overseeing them. So there is, that's sort of like loneliness, that's sort of a rock is just revolving around without any purpose or the meaning. So how to instill this meaning and order in the minds and hearts of the people, and in a sense turning this transient life into a meaningful medium, or in the analogy of a school of wisdom, in a sense, like you just can consider this life a university. When you enroll to a university and you spend, let's say, 4 years in that university, and each year you are taking certain classes, some of them are required classes, some of them elective classes, right? You are taking all of those classes. At the end, you are maturing through those classes and you are graduating. And when you look at back, okay, I came to this university and I got very good education. I still need to work on this, but I was good at it. And then it's time for me to graduate and continue the next stage of my life. So how to introduce this life as a kind of university, that you come with a purpose and you have certain schedule and curriculum to follow, and then the goals to follow. And then the second one is the analogy, is the considering the world as an exhibit of the names and attributes of God. So this exhibit, in a sense, we are visiting like a museum, like an art gallery, and through each art piece, we are observing and seeing and trying to understand the maker of that art, and appreciating and understanding. And every piece of creation becomes a medium, becomes a messenger, and becomes a teacher to describe us, to help us understand the creator and maker of this universe. And then finally is how to kind of present this life as an analogy, as a garden that we plant certain seeds and make some investments, but we harvest the fruits in other life, in that eternal life. So these are, I guess, the challenges. And then these are the duties of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, waiting for him, and how to instill these meanings, a new vision to people's eyes and minds. So I'll just stop here, and next week also continue some part of this topic. But one thing that I want to finalize our presentation today is a personal story that when I was in middle school, I was in the 8th grade. And in that 8th grade, a friend of mine invited me to a dorm which I was going sometimes and studying. We went together that dorm, and there was a magazine. It was the year of 1989, around that years. At that time, there was a magazine, it's a political, like a Times magazine, recently publishing. And at the end of the magazine, they started publishing a picture, which is the Magic Eye picture. I don't know, have you ever you see that picture, Magic Eye? Our audience can just search it. Or in Turkey, they was called 3D images. So it was basically like the repetition of the same, like the birds, for example, many times. So when you look at the image, only thing you see is the repetition of the birds side by side, right? So I looked at that image, and he said, my friend, he's a very trustworthy person, that I never see him like lying or exaggerating. I really trust the person. And then he said, Yasir, there is a ship in this image. I said, what? And then, yeah, there is a ship in this image, but look at it. And then, of course, I don't have any concept like this before. You know, we don't have any 3Ds like the computers at that time, any concept like this that helped me to understand or to relate. So all of a sudden, a picture become another picture, right? It's a kind of an absurd idea. And then he said, no, there is. And I was a very kind of a logical, and then, no, I don't see anything. You know, it takes him almost like 10 minutes to convince me that there is a ship in this image, right? And then after that, I just trust and follow his instructions. And he said, look at it with this angle, and start looking with that angle. And then after a while, a ship really just appeared in the picture as a 3D ship in that picture. So all of a sudden, something that is invisible to me become visible. If they put that picture on the wall, probably if I just pass by 100 times, I never see that ship in that picture, because I have the eyes, naked eyes, but I don't have the mental eyes. Even though like what I have the naked eyes, they don't see because I don't have the software to see it. It's hardware there, but software is not enabled to see that, right? So after I just, follow that, but this is a kind of a blind faith in a sense, because because of my relationship with that person, because I just believe him that he never lies, I just follow him. And eventually, after some struggle, I start seeing the thing that is invisible to me, right? And after that, it just becomes normal. Whenever I come, I just see the ship there. But for many people who doesn't have that installed, that mental software, it is still invisible. It is still invisible because they don't look at it in that way with their mental lenses, right? So just building upon the former parts of the lecture series, which is trustworthiness and the truthfulness of the prophets, right? So when you don't trust the person, even though they are introducing you the best of things, you cannot make that journey. You cannot trust the person, even though, like, at the end you will reach the best ideas or the best images. It requires certain level of trust, certain level of vulnerability, and understanding each other. So I guess this story is very much good representation of the place of the Prophet Muhammad in the society that he was living, and then when he was saying, there will, if I tell to you there is an army coming, do you believe me? They say yes. Whatever you say, we believe because we know you. We know you from childhood. You never lie. So the Prophet Muhammad built his vision, built his message and the prophecy upon that truthfulness and trustworthiness. So people just hold his hand, and like I just hold my friend's hand, and even though I don't see, at least I believe and start looking for the image. So people start looking for that vision, either the afterlife or either the existence of God or other things that are invisible formerly, so they become visible after that journey and after that trust relationship. I guess that was the essence of his message, first of all, that new vision for the Arabian society, but it was already exists in the monotheistic religions. But through that trust relationship, through that amana, he conveyed that message, and many people, by following this message, they start understanding and seeing what is not, even though if it is there, something that is not visible to them. So I will just stop here and continue the other parts of my presentations next week. If there is any comments and the questions, I can take.
Thank you so much for the insightful talk, Dr. Bilgin. So we appreciate it. It was a very insightful talk. So we have a couple of questions to you about today's topic. So first of all, our first question is, in the Hadith, Prophet Muhammad says, "Oh God, forgive my people because they don't know." So thinking about this Hadith, in this modern era, when there's so much information out there available with just one single click, how do you think the Hadith of "they don't know" should be interpreted and is applicable to the present, especially considering the current climate, when we see humanity dying and we all are informed about those news around the world every single day? So from this Hadith and from this chapter overall in the approaches of the prophets to communication, are there any conclusions that could be drawn by especially Hizmet members and the youth within the movement, in that they will shape the future of this world and the interactions with the American society especially?
I guess that hadith is coming in the context of the Uhud battle of Uhud, when the Prophet Muhammad was lost many of his companions, right? And he himself personally wounded in his face. And at that moment, just imagine yourself in that situation, like many of your friends died in the fields, you can see them, and also you are wounded, you are feeling that pain, and there is people who are outraged around you, your friends, and they are saying, "Oh, Prophet Muhammad, you are the companion, you are the prophet of God, just pray to God so they just destroy them," right? That sort of environment. And all of a sudden, I guess, very personal, I'm just thinking myself, right? After that pains, after those sufferings, seeing your friends dying, it is almost impossible just to kind of stepping back a little bit from that emotional environment and detaching yourself, and then just focusing on your mission as a kind of a long-term human society, and just considering rather than your personal or kind of communal gains, or the priority is just looking beyond, and then saying, oh God, they don't know, please forgive them, right? That, I guess, communicating a lot of like messages, I mean, that attitude, I guess individually, the like people of the Hizmet undergoing a lot of suffering in Turkey or some part of the world, or people that we are in currently, all of those racism, social injustices that is unfolding on the TVs, all the riots, happening right at this moment. That individual personal attitude, so much focusing on the global, universal, or the whole humanity's peace, and also harmony, and well-being, just focusing on that, and then postponing your own personal wounds and sufferings, rather than basing all of your reactions on that personal experience. I guess in terms of forgiveness, in terms of embracing people with compassion and mercy, this is communicating a lot of messages to us.
Thank you. For question number 2, Prophet speaks to the people's intellect. What does it mean? Do you think Muslim scholar or dawah maker are following the same method that Prophet does?
I guess when it says speaking to their intellect, which means all the messages of the Prophet Muhammad was making sense for his audience. In that context, rather than giving them a vision, a message, a life, formulations that goes beyond their understanding, and they just, blindly just blanking their mind and then just following. We don't understand what we are doing. We are just following. I guess yes, it is initially, it is a required quality that people trust you, but there is a certain limitation for this. If your messages doesn't make any sense, right? It might be like, for example, I mean, for today's, as a lesson for us, for example, certain books, certain messages can make a lot of sense for me, someone who grew up in Turkey, for example, in that culture. When I look, like this book is one of the example that we are studying, right? The life of the Prophet Muhammad, which was the part of a preaching series, right? That the preachings are transcribed to a book, so it become a book. But eventually, it's just a book, or the preachings or the sermons, mainly aiming the audience within the Turkey, right? In maybe 40 years ago or 30 years ago. So for my generation, things that make sense, it doesn't make any sense for the generation or my kids who are growing in the United States. Know anything about struggles or the other things in Turkey. So yes, I am communicating something which purely makes sense to me, and I just assume that it makes the same sense to them as well, which I just taking as a granted, but is not. So they don't understand. Yes, I am talking to my intellect. It makes sense, but not to their intellect. So in this sense, every message, every prophet, every sage, spiritual leader, or the communities, they're child of their times, and then they should consider that, okay, is my message is still relevant, right? Is the challenges that I was facing, let's say the poverty in Turkey, let's say the social conflicts, or the ignorance, yes, I identified those as the big wounds and illnesses of the Muslim community of 1908, 1909, identified by Nursi, right? These are the big illnesses that we should declare fight against, right? Are they still the major problems that we are living in the United States or in the West. Are people ignorant and in terms of education? So, or are people poor, right? So should I just establish organizations that alleviate the poverty in this community? Should it be the priority, or should I change it, right? Yes, it was make total sense in that context, in those years, but should I change my message? I guess this is, how I understand when you are speaking to the intellects, speaking to the minds of people. When they listen to you, they say, well, it seems very logical. I mean, it's just really talking about my situation. I can relate myself, and I can understand it, and I can visualize this message. But if I say as a response, well, what is he talking about? I mean, it's just, I am living totally in different reality, but he is speaking about a totally different reality. He is living, or he's preaching his own reality, but it's not my reality. So how we can communicate and understand, first of all, compassionately, attentively, listen our audience, and really empathize, sympathize, and understand our audience concerns, and then adjust and convey our message accordingly. So I guess that's kind of my understanding, personal understanding of communicating the intellect.
Yeah, that's a very nice conclusion. Thank you so much, Dr. Bilgin, for being with us today. It may be good to conclude here. And our dear audience, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching Salam Islamic Center Weekly Seerah series. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch the second part of this chapter. We hope to see you again next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah.